Hello Steelers, welcome to this very special video in which I'm going to be looking at the forthcoming and imminent, as I record this, Chain of Command 2. This is basically what is new in Chain of Command 2. What I want to do is I want to kind of go through the rules. These are some that I've printed. This is the proof copy that we've been sent for playtesting and for also going through and just making sure that, you know, trying to iron out typos and all these bits and pieces and things in there. So this stage, as I'm recording this, is actually quite old, and I know it has already been superseded anyway by a lot of us giving our feedback on, you know, looking for typos, and I know there's a few proofreaders at the moment going through it as well. So with that caveat in place, I also want to say as well that this is not the final design of it, but it will give you a pretty good idea as to how it's going to look. I think Richard has already shared some pictures of the final design on the Facebook group for Chain of Command, so you can go and have a look at those as well. As I say, this is 99.9% there, but there are going to be quite a few extra little bits here and there in the rules. Richard gave me permission to do this video and talk about some of the changes in the rules. I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just going to look at quite a few, some of the major ones really. What you're going to find in Chain of Command 2, if you played Chain of Command 1 before, is that a lot of the rules are still intact. You will notice that it is very much still Chain of Command. It is the game that you love and play a lot, because I know I do. And I've found, you know, through our play testing that a lot of it really hasn't changed massively. There's been quite a few things where things have just been smoothed out a little bit. One or two things have changed in very small amounts that you will notice. So one of the things is like the M1 Garands, for example, no longer reroll ones. It's part of the marching fire national characteristics that the Americans have in there. So there's just little things like that. So I would suggest when this comes out and you get it in your hands, do read it very carefully, even if you're a very seasoned Chain of Command player, but just simply because there's going to be a few little things that, you know, are just tiny tweaks that are in there that will change stuff up. And what you'll see in this copy that I have, there's no index, which will be included. There's no content again, which will be included. There's also going to be, you know, quite a few extra pages in here. I think there's about 110 pages of this, so you're probably looking at somewhere between about 110, 120 pages for the rules, similar to the original. But again, just a little bit more packed out with stuff. And I'd say, like I say, basically it's Chain of Command, but it's Chain of Command on steroids. I think that's about how it's been described by one of the playtesters, Jeff, and I think he's right. You will find everything in the rules very familiar, but also with just a few little extra tweaks that are just going to really push it over, and I think it just makes such a much better game. The games that Dex and I have played as playtesting have really just kind of gone a little bit beyond what Chain of Command was. And Chain of Command, as you know, if you've watched this, my channel for any time, is my favourite game, and has been for a long time. This has really just kind of made my favourite game into my even more favourite game, if that's possible. So first of all, as I said, bear in mind this is not the finished product. It's, you know, it's quite far down the line at this point. It is still currently being edited as I speak, as I record this. So there will be changes in how the layout looks a little, but this is, you know, it gives you a reasonably good idea of how the actual game is going to look, and how the rules will look, and how the game will play as well. One of the things to mention is, first of all, we've got our old pal, Captain Joss, MC of the Cheshire Regiment, and he's going to be taking us back through the rules. He's going to be there to give you a few little guiding points here and there. This is one of the things as well in the rules, is that there are these kind of things, these warning orders. He just talks really about, you know, how the game plays, gives you a bit of an explanation of the mechanics of the game, the ideas behind it. So there's that kind of thing as well, just really for new players, which is very good to see. But first of all, we're going to jump into Chain of Command points. So in the old Chain of Command, you could only really spend a Chain of Command dice when you've got 6 points. So it sometimes was quite frustrating. It took quite a long time to get your points up there. You can still do that, and they still do pretty much exactly the same as they did previously, so that hasn't changed. You know, you can still do your ambushes, you can do avoid force morale tests, or move jumping off points, all the usual stuff that you know. no love from the previous one. However, now we have a new spending power for these, and you can spend a certain amount of points. This is something that's come through on the 1940 handbook and also on the Far East handbook as well, but it's been really expanded on here in the second edition. So what we can do is we have these reactions now, simply because if you put a unit onto Overwatch, your enemy is always going to know that they're on Overwatch. However, nowadays, you can actually spend chain of command points to react fire when people move in front of you, for example. Or you can hit the dirt when they are taking fire. So it just makes their cover go up by a level. Another interesting one as well is the assault deployments, which both Dex and I have used successfully in games, literally using APCs, and they have now suddenly become a lot better in their use, because you're not just driving them and dropping troops off and then that's the end of their turn. You can actually push them forward, and then units can jump out of them and be ready to fire and to fight straight away. And this is a really, really nice way of using units in half tracks or in trucks or whatever, and getting them on the table and getting them across the table as well, and quickly into action. And this is a really great use of using chain of command points, and I think it is just going to be one of those things that really makes the game a lot more dynamic. I mean, it was a pretty dynamic game anyway, but we're just adding that layer of dynamism and unpredictability between the two players. One other thing with the chain of command points is that you actually gain them when your enemy rolls 2 or more 6s on their command dice. So basically, you are always building up, even though you're at a disadvantage. They're getting another phase, but you're getting more chain of command points, which in turn is going to allow you then to do your spend your various points. And they soon build up as well. They soon build up pretty quickly because of that. Again, this is something that's really just a nice little subtle twist on that previous double phase or multiple phase. That again, many people have house ruled it so that you take a dice off every time you roll for a double phase, but this also just gives your opponent just that little nudge up as well, just to go in really to just to help out a little bit. So it's not a crazy you're not just going to get steamrolled. You actually do have something in your arsenal that you can actually react against if anything happens to you in those double phases. It would be remiss of me to not mention the Storm of Steel bonus. This is basically for explosive weapons and also people using their national characteristics. So it's kind of a nudge towards players using national characteristics. Basically, they're exploding dice. What happens is when you roll your dice, if you roll 6s on these particular weapons or on explosives and things, you roll a 6, you get to roll again, and that could either hit again or roll another 6. If it rolls another 6, they keep rolling and keep rolling and keep rolling until you run out of 6s. So let's say, for example, a 3-inch mortar. It has 2 firepower, it has an explosive charge, so any 6s rolled get re-rolled. So potentially you could, ultimately you could hit any number of troops. It's not just hitting with 2 dice. It's a really nice little way of doing things, and I'm quite pleased to see the Storm. Mortars is another big change here, really. In the first game, they were a bit of a game ender. We used to get dueling mortars almost sometimes, and they would pretty much end a game because they would finish off units, pin them, and then you're pretty much done for the end of the turn if you were trapped under mortar fire. Now it's a little harder to actually get the mortars because they are battalion level mortars, and you're a platoon commander. You may not even get them. So basically, you don't have any control over the mortars. All you can do is really call them in. Then you roll to see where they come in, and then you see if they deviate or whatever. And they only fire for 3 phases as well, and you are forced to actually use your dice to keep that battery firing. Otherwise, the battery will disappear, and you don't get it again. You can extend it for another 1 or 2 phases by buying ammunition as part of your supports. But yeah, in general, they are still pretty devastating when they actually land, but they're a lot more unpredictable. And I think players will probably like this a little bit more than they had previously done with mortars, which I think is, it's one of the biggest complaints in Chain of Command. There's a couple of other things here and there, but yeah, I think mortars are probably one of the bigger complaints that a lot of people had, and they also, people had house ruled them down a bit. I think this really makes them ever so slightly different and a bit more, as I say, unpredictable, and just not as devastating or game ending that they at least used to be in Chain of Command 1. Another major thing is the smoothing out of the armor fighter vehicle rules, and when they're fired at, or when they're hit, when they're damaged, these are a lot more intuitive than they previously were. The actual charts themselves have been cut down massively, and you've also just got, it just makes much more sense as it has done in the past. It's one of the things, personally, it's always been a bit of a bugbear of mine, is going through the charts for the armoured fighting vehicle firing rules. This is a lot quicker. You've got basically, you've got the two different charts here. It's pretty simple. If you have a net hit, one net hit, they automatically take a shock. Two net hits, two shock. Three net hits, it's destroyed. It's that simple. This just happened. It just really makes it a lot smoother and a lot easier to actually play with armor, or multiple armor on the table, rather than having to refer back to the book and check these things. You can pretty much hold a lot of this stuff in your head. How much shock you're automatically going to get. So I got two net hits, right? Stick two shock down on it, and then just roll the dice to see which position has been destroyed or immobilized, or the commander wounded. Really simple, nice, lovely little change there, but again, just for the better, I think, really. Just makes things just that little bit speedier when you're playing. The scenarios, or missions as they're now called, are pretty much as they were before. The 6 of them you'll get. There are quite a few bits and pieces that have changed in them, but overall the actual things are pretty similar. It gives you your background to it, your objectives, your patrol phases, how much support you get, and also what kind of terrain is on. So it's very similar. There's one new thing in here, well, a couple of new things in fact. One of them is the final countdown. And this is when you're attacking an objective. So if either player has captured the objective, they can then begin to initiate the final countdown. They need 3 chain of command points to spend on this. And basically what happens is whatever level your opponent's force morale is at that time, that is where the countdown begins. And if anybody rolls 3 6s in that phase, so ends a turn within those number of phases. So let's say your opponent's force morale is on 6, you have 6 phases. If somebody rolls 3 6s in that time, ends the game with whoever is in control of the objective winning the game. If it goes beyond that, it then goes to it basically goes to sudden death, and it's anybody who rolls 2 6s. So you have to really time it. It's a really nice way of doing this. You time it when your opponent's force morale is quite low, and when you think that you're going to be able to hold on to that objective. It also forces your opponent, if you capture the objective, for them to get off their arses basically and attack the objective and try and get it back. Dex and I played this quite a lot in lots of our games, and it really does, again, just add that dynamism towards the end of a game, whereas before you would probably just want to sit and just shoot it out on a force morale loss. Here you are now forced into doing something with your troops and just getting them forward and getting something happening. And it's the same as well in the ticking clock. This is another one as well. The defender can actually use chain of command dice to reduce the attacker's force morale by 1 point for every dice they spend. So they can only do it once per phase, but that is another way of just literally getting the attacker on their feet and getting them doing something to try to attack. So these are, again, tiny little changes, but things that really, really make the game come alive. And then finally, really, for this preview, I just kind of want to have a look at some of the changes for the force list. So for example, there's been a couple of extra units put in here and there. So the Germans have now Volksgrenadier, so that's the 4 forces now instead of the 3 that were in the original book. The Soviet Union have got the rifle platoon, the SMG platoon, and a motor rifle platoon as well. And these are much more fleshed out as well. I know that Rich was relatively recently, whilst recording this, had been looking into Soviet lists and things, so these are much more fleshed out than they were previously. A lot more thought has gone into them as well. And also, when you're coming to get your support list as well, these are now color coded, so you know exactly what kind of support it is that you're buying. So armor is in red, for example, machine guns and things, or heavy machine guns are in green, that kind of thing. So you know exactly what you're buying when it comes to the different scenarios and the different force lists that you're allowed. You know exactly what it is you can buy. So this is a really nice way of just, you know, introducing new players to it. But I mentioned them previously. National characteristics have also changed as well. So these have gone from pretty much only 2 for most people, for most sides. These have really been developed. So the Soviets now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. You know, some of them are things like lacking radios, for example, and stay close, which means they can't operate as individual teams unless they're scouts. But you also do get scouts as well as part of the Soviets, which is a nice new addition as well, and they're different again to other scouts from other units, other sides. So again, you've got this real, you know, it really has developed the not just the Soviets but all of the forces as well. So again, I've said it once before and I'll say it again, you know, it's well worth going through this very slowly and carefully, and just really picking out the differences between it and Chain of Command 1 if you played Chain of Command 1 quite a lot, which, you know, a lot of people probably watching this video have done and are familiar with it. There's going to be so much in here that is not unfamiliar, but just adds a little bit extra, and it's worthwhile just taking. Well, that's it, folks. I'm going to wrap up there, really, because as I say, I didn't want to give you too much away because we're still in a very early stage of the game. It's going to be out in the next couple of weeks, I think, or at least, you know, within the next month or so of me recording this. So, you know, there's a lot more to come in this, and as I say, 100%, this is not a finished copy. This is definitely not, you know, this is not what you're going to be holding in your hands in, you know, hopefully in about a month or so. But it's going to give you a pretty good idea of what to expect. Some of the major changes from Chain of Command through to Chain of Command 2. Some of the dynamism that's been injected into the game itself. You know, just the interaction between players. As I say, really with the Chain of Command points, the Chain of Command dice and those kind of things, and just the smoothing out as well of some of the original rules, which again are just going to really help players and also new players alike as well. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, as short as it has been, but I've been wanting to make this for a little while. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have done, please do hit that subscribe button. I'm going to have some Chain of Command 2 battle reports coming out when the game is finally released, so keep an eye out on the channel for those. You'll see them if you are subscribed, because they'll come up in your feed on YouTube, and I will see you in the next Storm of Steel video.